Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. On the last video, we ran out of battery, so we're doing some afterthoughts now. I have one issue about the the ta'a. We talked about how the problem of representation and how it's not mature in the political mind of Muslim leadership when they're trying to cause change, toss away dictatorships and create what the Islamic dream. We talked also about the issue of how what is the mechanism of change, because many established regimes would leverage the clergy of Islam to basically say that you have to obey the ruler, and that mutates into a form of dictatorship. One of the verses they cite when they try to say, oh, you have to obey, you have to obey, you have to obey, is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَأَطِيعُوا اللَّهَ وَأَطِيعُوا الرَّسُولَ وَأُولِي الْأَمْرِ مِنكُمْ. Be subservient or responsive, or listen to Allah and to His Messenger and to your leaders. And they stop there. Well, the same verse has a continuation, but they don't mention. I mean, this is the message they want to give you. Worship Allah, listen to Allah, listen to the Prophet, listen to your leaders. Done deal. I mean, there's like no room for negotiation there, because it's Allah, the Prophet, the leadership. Allah, the Prophet, the King. That's basically where it turns out to. Allah, this is the verse. Look, I mean, it's amazing. I mean, it's almost deceitful. Well, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says at the rest of that same verse, فَإِن تَنَازَعْتُمْ فِي شَيْءٍ فَرُدُّوهُ إِلَى اللَّهِ وَرَسُولِهِ. But if you quarrel about something, or if you disagree about something, or if you have conflict about something, then go back to Allah and His Messenger. Well, the part about if you have a disagreement basically says you're allowed to have a disagreement, or it's a possibility that you should have a disagreement. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is giving you a mechanism to resolve that disagreement, which means the disagreement is inevitable. Doesn't mean I have just listen, and keep my mouth zipped and I can't say anything. No, we can talk and we can have disagreements, and we need a mechanism to resolve this disagreements. So it's not a one-way street; it's a two-way street. The other issue about you would find in the literature of the groups a very, very weird concept, and that concept, that's why when I said yesterday it's like a mini dictatorship model. It's a concept that you have to absolutely listen to the people on top. And you find this in Shia too. They call it something else. When the clergy of Shia, especially the political ones like in Lebanon, they want somebody to do something, especially if it's like a tough task, like fight in Syria and kill civilians, kill Muslims in Syria, for example. When they want somebody to like convince him with how to murder another human being, let alone a Muslim, they will tell him, oh, this is taklif shari. Taklif shari. What does the word taklif shari means? Basically, like it's a religious duty. التكليف الشرعي هذا تكليف شرعي. It's like it's coming from Allah. I mean, through the guy with the beard and who's basically just manipulating people around and getting paid from Iran and under the table. So you find some of that also in the Sunni movements, like at-ta'a, and it's a really conflict between the old guard and the new guard, so to speak. It's in between the old generation and the new generation. But the dynamic of that conflict, instead of taking a natural form, like, you guys have a set of ideas that were maybe appropriate for your age, circumstances have changed, world has changed, environment has changed, dynamics of everything has changed, technology has changed. Now we have our set of ideas that we think are more effective, and we're just going to have some dynamic interaction, maybe rough, but no, we have to listen. Okay, where does and it's basically it talk about how democratic is the process, and they say, well, we're not a country, so we don't have to be democratic, and whatever a group decides to do, like whether the internal decision of how to run the group is appropriate, and to a great degree that is true. But the problem is when your group is claiming that you are on the grandiose task of creating a state. It's not like your group is, responsible for building a bridge or cleaning up the city or, doing some scientific project. You are creating the state. So at the very least, you should have some kind of vision about the democracy issue of how to run the state. The issue of democracy is problematic in the internal dynamics of, and you see this in many. You see this also in the. I mean, I don't want to specify names because once you specify names, people become too defensive. But for people who are working within the Islamic groups, they definitely sense like that. And just like any other power structure, and we should talk about the dynamics of power structure in general. I mean, I have a whole session about this. Just like any power structure, power wants two things. It demands conformity, and it wants to spread. It's the nature of power. It's like saying red light is red, or blue light is blue. It's its nature. Power, that's what it does. It wants to spread, and it demands conformity, which means it doesn't tolerate internal conflicts very well. Which means if you're not a subservient enough, basically you'll be filtered out or expelled or whatnot. So where's this whole concept of how shura is, like what are the details of shura, is not mature. And I'm not saying there should be like one type of shura, but at least don't kill the principle. I mean, maintain the principle, approximate the principle, keep the principle alive. 60-70% of the time, if reality demands cannot apply 100% of the time, don't apply it 0% or 1%. So that's one afterthought. The other thing I wanted to mention about politics, and I've seen this firsthand, is as you try to incite change, you want to push against the establishment, right? And some people that are aligned with the regimes, they would tell you, أطيعوا الله ورسوله وأولي الأمر منكم, and the other people say, no, fight. I mean, not everybody is with the regime. I mean, this is the thing. I mean, they play around with the verses and the hadith and the text the way they want. I mean, if they're with the regime, they will highlight those that you understand that you should be subservient to the regime. If you're outside, they highlight the verses that are conflict oriented and incite you and inspire you to create change. But those on the other side who are trying to create change, very often, because of the prevailing paradigm, again, I mean, I'm not talking about contemporary history, political history, I'm talking about how the paradigm affects that, and how the new paradigm can make you a little more focused and hopefully a little more successful. The prevailing paradigm does not, has a problem with the priorities. Honestly, it's not even a function of the prevailing paradigm. It's a function of how we today understand the prevailing paradigm. Like, we are in so much taqleed that we don't even realize how to prioritize things. The true example. In Syria, we have to go to the military. It's obligatory. And religious people like to grow their beard. Just like you want to grow your beard. And and this is not criticism by any way, please don't take it that way, but the concept is when you go to the military, the Ba'ath regime, and the same story in Iraq also, is completely anti-Islam, totally, despite what they tell you in the West. They are the Satan reincarnate. So they force people to shave when they are in the military. Egypt too, okay. They force people to shave. And then that creates like this humongous problem between the guy goes back, he's like 21 years old, or maybe not even 17 years old, and he doesn't know anything about anything. The guy goes back like on his vacation in his masjid or his halaqah, and oh, you shave, oh no man, oh you have to fight. Or prayer, for example. Prayer is even problematic. I mean, if you pray in the army in Syria, you go to jail. I mean, you have to pray like under your bed or something. So you find people on the other side. Oh no, like this is of course prayer is a priority. I'm not saying that prayer is not a priority, but something like the beard, like it's not even worth fighting about. I mean, it's not even worth putting your situation at jeopardy for. And if you go back to the hadith about the beard, at least I mean, the prevailing paradigm is everybody grew their beard. So what did the Prophet tell them? Keep the beard long and trim the mustache so you can look different. I mean, you could understand this in the context that he wants you to grow the beard, or you can understand it in the context, no, like everybody is growing a beard because of the time and age, and all he wants you is to trim so you can be a little bit different. And a little bit different from what? A little bit different from people that are living with him, the Jews. Like living with him, the Jews. It's not like people on another continent or across the Atlantic. So it's all about how you, and if it was this big of a deal, I mean, at least you would find a hint in the Quran in it. So it's one of those things that, and I'm not debating the issue of beard or not beard. I mean, obviously, I grow a beard just out of being lazy. I don't grow a beard, because I want to grow a beard. But it's at the very least, I mean, you want to consider it part of your religion, but please put it in the right order. It's not worth fighting with the officer in the military for. But this is what happens, and then the minute the minute the guy is done with the military service, like boom, he grows a beard. And of course, when the regime is fighting the people with what the people perceive as symbols of their religion, the people it creates an opposite reaction completely. Like people really want to grow their beard, and even though it's like it's like 99 on the order list of what's important in Islam, or at least in my opinion, they have to grow your beard. It's not worth. You want to grow your beard, it's fine, but don't tell people who are in an extremely difficult position, who are like under the microscope when they're doing the military service. Oh, you shouldn't back off on this. I mean, you back off. It's like you back off on the beard thing. Like the next thing you're gonna become lose all your moral values and and lose. Of course, the prayer is a different story. You have to keep praying, but it's okay to keep praying in a safe way. You can't possibly think you're gonna survive your military service while you go out of your tent and you make azan and you Allahu Akbar and everybody say you'll be tossed in jail in 5 minutes. So you can't. It's not gonna happen. So again, what I'm trying to say epistemologically, this tadafu'. Sunnat al-tadafu', which is a Quranic sunnah. Sunnat al-tadafu' to make the world a better place. كذلك يضرب الله الحق والباطل ولولا دفع الله الناس بعضهم ببعض لهدمت صوامع وبيع إلى آخره. Sunnat al-tadafu', that concept is not mature enough in Islamic political mind. Another issue is the another big issue. Very big issue is the concept of leadership itself. So we talked about the style of leadership, democratic versus not, and how that style of leadership fits with the concept of representation. And we talked about how to sunnat al-tadafu'. But the concept of leadership is very problematic. And there is a very, very famous statement which is taken out of a verse of the Quran and has been misused, abused, and misrepresented throughout history. And the verse is La hukma illa lillah. Yes, La hukma illa lillah. But whenever you see Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, there is no rule except for Allah. But when you follow the Quranic vocabulary again, you will never, ever, ever find in the entire Quran the word hukm, which is used in our day as being like the executive branch, the ruler, the president, the prime minister, the dictator, the general, the king, the sultan, the emir. You will never find the word hukm when Allah talks about it means that. If anything, it means the legislation. It doesn't mean the executive branch, it means the legislation. But anyways, they use it, la hukma illa lillah. And it started obviously between the problem between Muawiyah and Ali. And it was an idea that Amr ibn al-As came and he lifted the masahif and said la hukma illa lillah. But it spread like wildfire. The concept la hukma illa lillah is basically, if you disagree with me, I am going to subdue you by saying is la hukma illa lillah. Like you disagree with me, la hukma illa, which means what I'm saying is hukmullah. You know, like Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is not going to come down and become a president or a prime minister. A human being is going to become a president and prime minister, and that human being is going to rule by some kind of mental framework in his mind, but he calls that hukm Allah. It's like Allah is the one who is ruling. You disagree with me? La hukma illa lillah. You want to defy Allah? We have a big problem. I mean, maybe even, you know. So, and this carried on, although it was used initially with the Ali and Muawiyah's conflict, but it became a slogan for all, for many, not for all obviously, but for many Islamic movements, old and the new. And in Egypt, you know, in the 50s and 60s, La hukma lillah, la hukma lillah. Well, what is La hukma lillah? There's going to be a human being who is performing this task. Allah is not going to come down and perform this task for us. So what are you talking about La hukma lillah? When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is talking La hukma lillah, he's talking about legislation. He's not talking about the executive branch. That's a big problem. So that's why in a lot of the Islamic understanding, the contemporary Islamic understanding, according to the prevailing paradigm, because they use like this concept of la hukma illa lillah, they are very much anti-democratic, and they say we're not, you know, democracy is un-Islamic. And they don't differentiate when they say democracy is un-Islamic between the representation executive part of democracy and between the legislation. Yes, if people come together and the parliament decides, oh, khamr is not haram, that's not Islamic. I mean, it's simple, done deal. But that's not all of democracy. First of all, the legislation, about the legislation part, there is a lot of room for gray areas. You know, obviously, again, we go back to the paradigm, the new paradigm. We said there's absolutes and there is probabilistic understanding. There is a big area for the human mind to work through the probabilistic understanding. And we said that the sources, you know, the ijtihad is probabilistic and the hadith is probabilistic, and they should be on the same level. And then you decide what you want to do on a case-by-case basis. You can't make an entire probabilistic category supersede another entire probabilistic category, but by you know, but from the get-go. So the issue of saying that the legislation is 100% Islamic. You are definitely using, at least for the probabilistic understanding part, for the gray areas, for the new concepts and new situations, you are using the dead to fix your problems today. You are using people that lived 1,000 years ago to fix your problems today, rather than you fix your problems yourself. So that's basically practically what it decays into. That's the legislation part of democracy. The executive part of democracy has nothing whatsoever is un-Islamic about it. It is a form of shura, you know, the how the democratic process happens. I mean, yeah, it has a lot of corruption, a lot of shortfalls and whatnot, but it's light years better than one guy putting his gun down and saying, "I'm going to rule you."
So the thing is that I don't think anybody's going to disagree with the fact that that verse is misused, you know, la hukma lillah, or the first one that you said about, you know, Allah, the Prophet, and then your leaders. I think what people are going to have issue with is the fact that you are categorizing that, doing that as part of the first paradigm, when I don't think that is the case. You know, like originally, I don't think any real scholar will ever say that this is how it's meant to be. This is just a few people, you know, leaders and whatnot that want to have control, and this is how they choose to do it. And they'll always find someone, you know, some sheikh of some sort, you know, to agree with them and say so.
You may be right.
Yeah.
But let me tell you two things. Number one, it's about how many people, the percentage of people today that subscribe to that thinking, to the thinking like, you know, if you disagree with me, I'm gonna lift la hukma illallah in your face.
Yeah.
To the thinking that democracy has nothing to do with Islam whatsoever, without making some details,
Yeah.
especially about the legislation in regards to the absolutes versus the probabilistic.
I just want to say one thing. It's just the fact that when people listen to this or read your book, they're going to get very defensive, you know, and it's going to be a natural reaction, because, you know, you are questioning something that has been established, you know, for 1,400 years, you know, and you know, we have been, you know, moving by and everything like that, and there's obviously you know, an unsurmountable amount of good in everything that has come through many generations of fantastic scholars, who've done their work and did what what you can. So the only thing that I'm kind of, and maybe I'm a little bit biased in that.
No, I want you here so you can represent the other side.
Okay.
So I want you to be adversarial.
Right. So to me, it's like, this is not paradigm 1 versus paradigm 2. Do you know what I mean? And maybe the way, like the best way to go about talking about these things, because this is an issue that needs to be talked about, is more of like, well, we're not here to kind of like like say that everything that went wrong is because of paradigm 1. Do you know what I mean? It's like this is paradigm, this is the paradigm 2, and these issues have been dealt with and have been spoken about in paradigm 1, for sure, by many a scholar who will say that these verses are abused, and it's something that we've all heard and learned all our lives. And maybe a little bit less if you grew up back home, because people are scared to talk about that thing. But I can tell you that growing up here, all of the, like, even the books that came my way that were from scholars from the Middle East were very much exactly what you are saying, right? So, I mean, that's all I'm saying. That's really, that's all I'm saying.
So my response to that is, number one, you could be right. It's not about like, it's not about black and white. It's not like paradigm 1 is black in terms of politics, and there is no white spots whatsoever, and paradigm 2 is white. It's definitely not like that. That's number one. Number two, the problem is really the human nature and how it abuses the information.
Yeah.
So paradigm 1 can be swayed in a good or a bad way.
Yeah.
But when they are in the field, when they are in the conflict, when they're trying to get to the chair, they don't they bring out the worst concept of paradigm 1.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And they justify everything to their immediate advantage.
I think what it is when confronted with this particular issue, people from paradigm 1, and I know I'm beginning to sound like it's classifying and whatnot, but like they address the issue in a certain way, and maybe that way is not as strong, or you feel, in your opinion, it's not as like there's a better way to counter this argument than what they use in paradigm 1. If what you use in paradigm 2, then you can talk about, you see. So when confronted with this particular issue, we would go about, or you would go about saying, that it's this and that, like this is how you counter it, and do you understand what I'm saying?
Yes. So I think the question really boils down to, is there a better political theory that you can construct out of paradigm 1 without having to revert to a new paradigm? I think that, do you agree that sort of sums up what you're trying to say? Is there a political theory that you can construct out of paradigm 1 without referring to changing the paradigm?
Well, okay, so we're mixing up two different things now, right? The first one is we have to reassess and reevaluate the entire political theory on if a certain party somehow gets control of a country, if a certain Muslim party somehow gets control of a country, how do they go about then establishing Allah's, like doing the right thing for Islam? Do you know what I mean? And that's great. That's one aspect, right? And that's something that needs to be addressed and needs to be talked about, because many have tried, and I think all of them have failed.
Pretty much.
And
the other ones that are successful, like Turkey, for example, are and this is so funny, are considered by the Salafi movements, like in Syria and in Jordan, as un-Islamic.
Yes.
Oh, Turkey is success, but Turkey means absolutely nothing. I mean,
that's
right.
right.
Has zero on the Islamic value in their opinion.
That's right. That's one aspect of it, right? And then the other aspect is dealing with these arguments that come your way, because
But the problem is those arguments are going to come in your way on your path to
absolutely
to leading a country.
Absolutely.
So
I
there's
guess all
sort
I'm
of,
saying. I guess
you
all
know-
I'm saying is you can't attribute the argument that's being said about la hukma illallah or follow the Allah, the Prophet, and then the leader to anyone who associates himself with paradigm one. Because I just don't think that is true, because we've had scholars fight leaders our entire history, with those very same with the very same arguments that are being said. I think that's all I'm saying.
So my response to that is, you are probably right, but the intellectual problems that you are going to face, I think of different grades, like different severity. For example, when some of them say Islam has nothing to do with democracy, and they say we shouldn't establish democracy, we should establish khilafah. Okay, well, this is being very generalized into basically people making zina halal or khamr halal. That's what democracy is all about. And on the other end, making like khilafah is like basically like as if the Prophet himself is the one who is ruling, not a human being or some kind of a model. So this is like one problem, and there's like another problem to Allah, to Rasul. So what I'm saying is, those problems that you're going to face on your pathway to leading a country and creating the Islamic dream are of different severities, and some of those low severity problems can be resolved within the same paradigm. I agree with you on that one. It's a human excessiveness that they just want to hang on to a very, very tight interpretation that fits. But what I believe is you can't solve the entire set of problems. Some problems are way too severe that you have to break the paradigm into a new paradigm. That's what I'm saying.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
And then you also need to establish and realize that no matter the paradigm, there will always be somebody who will find a way to abuse.
It's a paradigm.
Yes.
By definition, there is a lot of human contribution and human construct to it. If it's a human construct, it's going to have contradictions and it's going to be abusable. It's a paradigm. What I'm trying to create is not utopia. What I'm trying to create is functionality. That's it. You have sort of the difference between an old car and, okay, now maybe it's time to buy a new car. The new car could have problems, right? You could have flat tire, you could have, but it's still, it's probably going to give you less trouble than the old car. That's really what it's all about. So I think with that, I'm done with my afterthoughts about the political aspect.